If there is one thing I have learnt in my life, is that you meet the most memorable people in the most random ways. In February 2020, 6 years ago, just before the onset of COVID, I was hospitalized in the ICU. Now, this was a very brutal time for me. It was harsh, it was nasty, and I was hospitalized for a near fatal experience with epilepsy. I was on life support, I had an incubator, I had an intervention with my arteries, I had a you name it what, and it was there. The doctor at Holy Family Hospital in Bandra declared that I had just 36 hours to live. St. Andrew's Church, also in Bandra, administered what is called the anointing of the sick, which is a sacrament or a practice administered by the church on Catholics just before they die. So my family had gathered around my ICU room. My extended family gathered around outside the ICU room. My friends waited in the hospital waiting room, and every church in Bandra offered a prayer for me during the Mass. My state was critical, my end was certain, but God had figured that the wrong parcel had been sent to heaven, and so he sent me down back to Bandra, where I made an entire recovery. In the meantime, I only lost my hair and I gained a pair of glasses. Anyway, there were 6 of us in the ICU at the time. There were 5 other old men and myself. In the ICU, it's done in a certain way where there are curtains that sort of separate the rooms of the ICU, so you can't really see each other, but you can hear from the bustle of the nurses and the doctors the urgency of a patient's condition. Now, amidst this torture, after a few days, there was one person from this ICU who passed away. 2 days later, there were 2 more people in the ICU who passed away on the same night. Now, the staff and the patients both felt that there was something off in the air. And the nurses had this running joke between them, saying, so who's next, huh? Who's going to finish the race? And you know that sick cackle that comes out from a person's soul when they hate their job. Anyway, so it was quite dreadful, and there were just 3 of us remaining. There was me, in this race, that is, there was me. There was another old man who lay opposite me in his 80s, and there was another old man in his 70s who lay diagonally opposite me, who I couldn't see, but I could hear. Now, this poor guy was screaming through every single night, just screaming on top of his lungs, excruciatingly, until one fine day, the nurse comes to me and tells me, sir, he's not saying anything anymore because he's had a major amputation. Yeah, it's a bit depressing, I know. But you know, the story is an empowering one. It really is. And I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, but I am glad I went through it. And the thing that really helps you during this dire time are your visitors. My family and friends who visited me at the hospital. They encouraged me, they spoke to me of a future, they cracked some very stupid jokes and made me laugh. My students, big shout out to them, who came to me and hyped me up in reciting poetry by my bedside. And this was very important because poetry brought me back to life. It really did. In the hospital, I had memory lapses, but guess what? I never forgot a single line of poetry throughout that time. If I ever needed validation for my professional choices, that was it. And that was great. However, I was also in a Catholic hospital, and so you get visited by many members of the clergy who are not very nice. And one such example is this one priest, the very man who gave me the anointing of the sick. He came to my bedside and he said, Graham, are you a teacher? I said, yes, Father, I am. Oh, that's lovely. Do you teach every student from every faith, and do you also participate in their religious festivities? I said, yes, very enthusiastically. So then he told me that I was struck with epilepsy. Jesus deservedly struck me with epilepsy because I ate prasad at a Ganpati celebration. Just the thing I need to hear in order to recover. Anyway, so you can just imagine that with 6 doctors looking after 6 different problems on me, I needed very desperately a change of routine. So, that old man who lay opposite me in his 80s, he had a grandniece who came to visit him every other day. She was damn hot. She had beautiful skin, like wow. She had a great face cut. She had beautiful big brown eyes. She had this dark hair, brown streaks. No, really, and she carried herself with such graceful confidence. It was just very sexy. She was very sexy. What else can I say? And I kept looking at her. You become a bit creepish when you're all alone in that ICU. So I kept looking at her, and when she turned around, she saw me beaming, and she met with my eyes. We had a little smile, and from that moment, I knew there was going to be a rapport shared between us. Anyway, so she turned, the moment she looked at me and smiled, she turned to her grand uncle, and she told him something very kind about me. I don't know what it was, because every morning when I woke up, he just waved very gently at me, and I couldn't make sense of what that was, but I took it as is. And with that grandniece, smiles turned into conversations, conversations turned into compliments. She would come and stand right outside my ICU room where there were curtains, and she would say, "You've got lovely dimples, huh? Lovely dimples. You must be getting visitors just for those dimples, don't you? They're lovely. Oh, by the way, you speak really well. I really like the way you speak. The nurses tell me that you also recite poetry. Could you recite one for me, please?" Bingo! I knew exactly what I had to do. Recite a poem. Yeah? So I thought very, very earnestly on my bed which poem would be the right one to recite. Now, there were 2 finalists. There was Her Voice by Oscar Wilde, and there was Love's Philosophy by Percy Shelley. Who do you think made it? Louder, please. Percy Shelley. It was Love's Philosophy by Percy Shelley. And in case any of you do not know this poem, and just for you to get a flavor of it, I'm going to recite the last stanza.
Yeah.
See the mountains kiss high heaven, and the waves clasp one another. No sister flower would be forgiven if it disdained its brother. And the sunlight clasps the earth, and the moonbeams kiss the sea. What is all this sweet work worth, if thou kiss not me?
Oh my God.
Yes! Exactly my point.
Oh my God.
I thought this would work like magic. I was confident. I was so confident it's going to work like magic. And with Shelley by my side, I had the faith. I knew what I was up to. And so I revised it very thoroughly for her next visit. Anyway, after that, when all things surgical were finished. Now, keep in mind, I was on my bed with 13 different tubes and wires and dialysis and hemolysis and rhabdomyosis and all this scientific jargon flung in. It was really very hard. And the medical team had, because I had a kidney failure, they had come and inserted a catheter into me. For those of you who do not know what this is, a catheter is something that is very painfully inserted into your part as an extension of a urinary tract so that you can pee at ease through the night. A few days later, they extracted the catheter, and it was as painful as it was when they inserted it in. But they told me, "Don't worry, Graham. Everything's fine because we've got a state-of-the-art catheter to roll on to you." Right. So this catheter, to be rolled on, is basically rolled onto your part, and you have to sleep on your side when it hangs off the railing of the bed, and it ends in a bag which is emptied out every other day. They called it the condom catheter. Now, it's called a condom catheter because it's used and applied just like a condom. I was skeptical because I couldn't get my part up. And I looked at the doctor and I'm like, how is this going to work? And he managed to put it on, like very seamlessly. And I'm like, wow, I was very impressed. And so the night was fine because my genitals were very generously covered by my robe, and my hospital robe, that is, and I peed into it very, fluently through the night, and there was no disturbance whatsoever throughout that time. It was the next day when the hospital staff came back to my room, and they had administered a face shave for me. Yeah, and there was a barber who came and shaved my face and everything, followed by my first ever sponge bath. Now, please remember, I hadn't been to a hospital for this long in my life before, and I was going to be touched all over my body, and I was not ready for it. Anyway, I was hoping that a female nurse would probably do me the honor, but I had a ward boy, and that ward boy's name was Gaurav, and his surname was also Gaurav. So basically, his name was Gaurav. So I was touched by a man with a repeated full name, and I did not enjoy the process. It was very, very, very humiliating. Anyway, I mean that in a good way, but I hope you understand me. So, right after the sponge, the condom catheter was rolled back by Gaurav. Yeah, and he tied my robe, and I sat down on my chair. Everything was in place, and everything was in order. Yeah, I felt good. I was clean, I was shaved, I was, everything was great. Until finally I heard my name. I heard, Graham! It was her. She had arrived. She had arrived, and she came to visit her granduncle, and she turned around and stood right outside my ICU room, just behind the curtains. And she told me, she said, you look very handsome today, all shaved. Your dimples are showing a bit more. And I was like, yeah, thanks. And I was hoping, ask for your poem. And she took a little while, and she did. And I kind of pretended like I didn't know which poem to recite, but then I decided, yeah, I'm going to do it. And at that very moment, I don't know whether it was nerves, I don't know whether it was the drugs running through my system, but I had to pee. The good news is there was a system in place. Yes, I told all of you there's a system in place. No harm, let's do it. And yes, the robe covers the genitals, so move on. And so I decided that I would launch into my first verse and launch into the catheter at the same time. Great idea, bright. So I sat there and I started the piece, and as I was speaking the poem, I felt a slight pressure, just a slight pressure. But see, these things are normal in a hospital. Like, there's nothing off in a slight pressure. And so I pushed forward. I went on with the piece. And as I was going on, I felt something moving slightly forward. And I happened to look down. And as soon as I looked down, my condom catheter was at the edge. And I tried to salvage the situation, but just before I could salvage the situation, the condom catheter flew out like a deflated balloon, and it flung urine everywhere on the walls. It was flying because of the tube. It was moving like this. And my crush stood outside in shock. She never knew what had hit her. And instead of getting a poem, she got flashed by me, because I lifted up my robe and I shouted, Gaurav, curtain band kar, jaldi! Band kar, jaldi! And she got flashed. She just got missed getting pissed on, and as a result was very pissed off. And we had a great anticlimax of poetry right there. Anyway, 2 days later, her granduncle had passed away. Yeah, very sad. And it's never, ever, ever good when someone passes away. It's never nice. But I will be very honest with you and tell you that I was very relieved when he passed away, because I would never have to face his grandniece again or relive that absolute moment of horror. Thank you very much.